Hi guys, and welcome back to another championship prediction video. Moving on to round 38, quick recap on round 37. No scores correct. I feel like it's been a while since I've said that. I've been, consistently getting at least one, but there's been a few weeks where I've got two. But I've got a zero. Hopefully we can bounce back, at least get one here. Before I get into the predictions, make sure to like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more championship content. Let's get in to the predictions. And starting off with Bournemouth versus Reading. Now Bournemouth back to winning ways, beating Derby 2-0. They look like they're going to get that second place spot. They've got quite a few games in hand, so if they don't manage to get top two, you'd be pretty concerned as a Bournemouth fan. But I think it's settled now. Fulham and Bournemouth for the top two. So yeah, they've had a good season. It looks like they're going to get promoted. Reading, on the other hand, they had a little spell where they looked like, they were going to come into a bit of form, pick up some points. They've lost 3 in a row now. Their last one was a 4-0 loss against Nottingham Forest. Doesn't get easier here. Teams below them are picking up points. Are Reading going to get relegated? Let me know down in the comments if you think they'll survive or not. For this one, I'm going to go Bournemouth to win 2-0. Barnsley take on Bristol City next. Now Barnsley have drawn 2 in a row against Stoke and Fulham. So 2 good points there for them. Could they really survive? I mean, they were obviously bottom of the table, really struggling, but they've started to pick it up a bit. They've got a few shock wins in there. Could they escape? They're playing a Bristol City side that won their last game 1-0 against Blackburn, but it's a Blackburn team that can't score goals at the moment, and they had lost 3 games before that. This one, for me, could go either way, but I'm going to call it down the middle, 1-1. Blues take on Middlesbrough next. And Blues, we drew 0-0 with Hull in our last game, but we're now 16 points above the relegation zone. So, championship football for another season. I'm obviously happy to stay up. I do want to try and progress. And I think these last few games now, if we can try and get as many points on the board as possible, try and finish above 15th, something like that, it would be nice, because we seem to be in that little window of 17th to 21st every season. To finish above that, show a bit of progression. We've had a lot of injuries this season. Hopefully, we can finish in a higher space and build next season. Middlesbrough, they are 1 point off the playoffs. They drew their last game 0-0 with Millwall, and they've been in very good form recently at home. However, away, out of their last 4 games, they've lost 3 and drew that one with Millwall. So they're not great on the road, which is obviously very good for us. I don't think we'll win this game because there's a lot for them to play for. We're sort of on the beach now. But I do think we will be able to nick a point off them. So I'm going to go 1-1. Blackburn take on Derby next. And this is a very big game because either side could win this given the form. Blackburn lost 1-0 to Bristol City and have managed to score 1 goal in their last 9 games. Somehow they're still sitting in the playoffs, but I don't think they'll finish there unless they can turn that around, because they need to start scoring or they're not going to pick up many points from anywhere. Derby, they are only 5 points off safety now. Could they survive? It would be a massive, massive achievement if Derby managed to stay in the Championship this season. But they do go on little runs, so you never know. Derby, they did lose their last game 2-0 to Bournemouth. But I think this game's there for the taking for them, because Blackburn just can't seem to score. I'm going to go for something I very rarely go for. A draw, but a 0-0. West Brom take on Fulham next. And West Brom, they drew their last game 2-2 with Huddersfield, thanks to, a little bounce back in the last 10 minutes. And they're unbeaten in 2 games. Could it finally start working for Bruce now? It might be a bit too late, but has he sort of settled in, and can they try and make a late promotion push? Fulham, they're unbeaten in 5, drew their last game 1-1 with Barnsley, and it seems like it's only a matter of time before they're crowned champions. This one, I'm not sure how to go about it, because West Brom, they obviously have quality in their side. They just haven't really been performing lately, but they have picked up the form over the last 2 games. Maybe they can cause a massive shock, but I'm going to favour the away side here and go for Fulham to win 1-0. Blackpool take on Sheffield United next, and my prediction here might come as a surprise. Blackpool, they've won 3 games in a row, and they've been in good form in 2022. Sheffield United lost their last game 4-1 against Coventry, and they actually haven't won in their last 3 away games. So they're not amazing on the road at the moment. Blackpool just seem to be able to shut teams out. They seem to win by 1-goal margins, and I fancy them to win here. I know it comes as a massive shock, but I'm actually going to go Blackpool to win 2-1. Cardiff take on Stoke next. 2 teams that will definitely be on the beach. Cardiff, they are unbeaten in 3 games. Stoke haven't won in 7 and drew their last game 2-2 with Peterborough. Now, I think Stoke have been on the beach for a while. Cardiff have only just got there. And I just think Cardiff have a little bit more going for them at the moment. So I'm going to go Cardiff win 2-1. Coventry take on Hull next. And Coventry, they won their last game, massive victory, 4-1 over Sheffield United, who are obviously sitting in a playoff position. That win was massive for them, as they're now only 3 points off the playoffs, and it keeps their playoff dreams intact. Hull, they've won 1 out of their last 9 games. It was against Peterborough, and they drew their last game 0-0 with Blues. Hull maybe don't have as much to play for, obviously not mathematically safe yet, as quite a few teams up down there aren't. Blues aren't mathematically safe, but I just don't see us getting relegated. Same with Hull. I don't think the teams below them are going to pick up enough points to catch them. So I think Hull, obviously not safe yet, but in my opinion, I don't think they'll get caught, but they've obviously still got to try and get points. I think Coventry are going to go for it a bit more here, and I think Coventry will win 2-0. Luton take on Preston next, and Luton, they've lost 2 out of their last 3 games, and the last one that they lost, 2-1 against QPR, was a game they did not want to lose, as QPR have now leapfrogged them in the table and Luton are out of the playoff positions. It would have been very good for Luton if they could have won that game to create a gap between themselves and QPR. And, they're in with a very good chance of playoffs now, but they've dropped out and they now have to, start winning a lot of games. Preston, they are unbeaten in 4, drawing 3 of those. So I think this game will either be a Luton win or a draw. Now, I quite like Luton. I like the idea of them, getting in the playoffs, because they're a team that have built up very well from, obviously, down below in the Football League pyramid. And, yeah, they're a well-run club. I also like them because Blues seem to, score a lot of goals against them, especially this season. But I just sort of want Luton to win this game. I don't know why, but I'm going to go Luton to win 1-0. A big game in terms of the playoffs up next. Millwall take on Huddersfield. And you might think, Millwall, they're not really in the running. But I do believe they are. Unbeaten in 7, they won 5, then they drew their last 2 0-0 against Middlesbrough and Blackburn. 2 very good points to get against teams above them. Huddersfield, all I have to say about them, they're unbeaten in 17 championship games, which is an incredible achievement because the Championship is, you know, it's such a tight league. There's a lot of teams. Anyone can beat anyone on their day. Probably one of the toughest leagues in the world to, you know, be consistent in. And they're doing a fine job with, you know, a team that I expected to finish in the relegation zone this season. Massively overachieving, and fair play to Huddersfield. For this game, I think there's going to be another draw here. I think Huddersfield unbeaten run will stay intact, and I'm going to go 1-1. Another massive game in terms of the playoffs as Forest take on QPR. And Forest, they're unbeaten in 6 and they won their last game 4-0 against Reading. QPR, they won a very big match for them against Luton 2-1 to go above them in the table, back into the playoff positions. And they'll hope that they've now turned a corner, because they have been in poor form recently. Hopefully for them, you know, they can start winning games now and get a playoff position, because I think that was their first bad run of the season, really. They've been pretty consistent apart from, you know, the last month and a half or so. So, you know, it would be a shame for someone who's done so well all season to miss out on the playoffs, but it's such a tight league. It's so tight for those playoff positions, and anything can happen. For this game, it's such a big one. I'd normally sit on the fence, but I've got a sneaky feeling that Forest are going to win here and make that playoff chase even tighter. So I'm going to go Forest win 2-1. And finally, Peterborough take on Swansea. And Peterborough, they have drawn 2 games in a row against Bournemouth and Stoke. 2 very good points. I did think that they'd actually beat Stoke. I just had a feeling, but they got a point, which is still very helpful for them in their position. Could they escape, or are they looking too unlikely now? They're playing a Swansea side that aren't in the greatest of form. They've lost 6 out of their last 10, and they did lose their last game against Blackpool 1-0. Now, I think Swansea, I've used the phrase a lot, but on the beach, Peterborough have a lot to play for. So I'm going to go for Peterborough to win again. Now, I don't think they can keep many clean sheets, this Peterborough side. So I am going to go for Swansea to score. But Peterborough, they got 2 against Stoke, and I think they can get 2 here. Peterborough to win 2-1. So those are my predictions for these upcoming Championship fixtures. But I want to know, what are yours? Make sure to comment down below what you think is going to happen this weekend. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more Championship content. Hopefully, we can get some scores right here and up the Blues.